Dear friends from the press, good morning. Welcome to the press conference. Today, firstly, I would report two notices to you. The first one is about the first quarter in 2018. It's about the situation of domestic consumer market. According to the State Statistics Bureau, in the January to March, the consumer revenue reached 9 trillion with a 9.8 annual growth. And in March, the social consumer market increased by 10.1%. That's a 0.4 growth point than that of January and February. And in January, the key area have also increased, which is also 0.4 growth point than last year. And in the first quarter of this year, the domestic consumer market witnessed a steady growth with a solid foundation, and the expenditure in the consumer market contributed 77.8% to the total revenue. There are several characteristics. The first is the online consumer market increased. In the first quarter, it totaled 1.5 trillion RMB with a 34.4% annual growth, and it accounts for 16.1% of the total consumer consumption, and with a 7% annual growth. And the key areas and enterprises, including the shop markets and retailer shop, the revenue increased by 18%, 16%, and 12% respectively. Secondly, the offline market is also witnessing steady growth, with the real economies upgrading and the traditional companies readjusting. There are also supply chain and service innovation. The offline market also witnessed a reversing growth. In the first quarter, the key areas including shop markets, retailers have increased by 1.7%, 1.4%, and 7.2%. with 0.8, 0.6, 0.5, and 0.4% growth. Thirdly, the upgrading of the consumption has been steady developed, and there are more and more demands for the green products and the good quality products. In the first quarter, the per unit qualified vehicles increased by 5.1% than last quarter, and the sales increased by 150%. And for the cosmetic and daily goods have increased by 16.1% and 12.3%, which witnessed the growth of 6.2% and 3% than last year. And the fourth is the service market has also witnessed a steady growth, including the fast growth in cultural and tourism field, and there are more niche markets for these fields. There are more ice and snow tourism, and education tourism, and also the flower and plants tourism. So the total market maintained a steady growth, which witnessed up of 10.3%, which is 1.7 more than last year. And the bucket, the film bucket increased by 30%. In the Spring Festival, the film box office totaled 57.2 trillion. That's a record high. And the consumer price also increased. It was increased by 2.1% than in the first quarter, which is up by 0.7%. And the consumption goods increased by 5% than last year. And in March, it declined by 5.4%, which and the 7 months consecutive growth. And the vegetables declined by 12%. The pork declined by 12.2%, with the favorable growth and the supply side structural reform, and also the fast growth of the income in both urban and rural areas. We have witnessed effective growth in the deepening consumption. In future, the consumer market will continue its steady growth. The second notice is about the first quarter in this year. It's about the online market. According to the Statistics Bureau, in the first quarter, the online market totaled 1.9 trillion RMB with 35.4% annual growth. And the goods totaled 1 trillion, also witnessed 34.4%. It's faster than the social consumption and accounts for 16.1% of the social consumption, which has be the strong driver of the social consumption. And there has been improved surveillance on the online market. In the first market, the East and Middle and West market also totaled 1.5 trillion RMB, 1.1 trillion, and 32 billion, with the 30+ annual growth in these regions. And in the first quarter, the home appliances, clothes, and communication materials totaled the top 3 of the online markets, with 400 billion yuan and 200 billion yuan and 100 billion yuan, with the annual growth of 32%, 31%, and 14%. And the rural products totaled 45 billion yuan, with the annual growth of 38%. The fruits and nuts and tea totaled 10.9 billion yuan, 9 billion and 8 billion, with the annual growth of 30%, 46%, and 35% respectively. And in the first quarter, the online market follows the characteristics that it has been improved, obviously, especially in the cultural tourism industry. And the books selling also increased by more than 50%. And we can see the change in the consumer market. The experience of the consumption also affects people's consumption. The statistics shows in the first quarter of 2018, the rural online market totaled 270 billion yuan, with 34% annual growth, and totaled 14% of the country's revenue. And the non-good service also increased by 38%. In the East, Middle, and West China, the online revenue is 200 billion, and 40 billion and 7 billion, with 32%, 40%, and 31% annual growth respectively. And these accounts for the region's online market for 13, 14, and 23%. And the second-hand good also drive the online market. The online and the offline second-hand goods are also booming, which contributed to the development also and contributed to the green economic development. In the first quarter, the social online platform has offered several types of shopping experiences, which has attracted the senior, the elderly, and the people from the east, from the West China, and offer convenience to the people. That's the notices. And now I'm ready to take your questions. A CRI, one U.S. official declared the White House think its action on the trade friction to China is successful, and it is planned that as early as next week they will sign detailed tariff on Chinese goods. That's about 25% tariff. But with the enlarging of the list, the consumer goods will be included, maybe. So how do you echo to this? We've notified this. We hope the U.S. side won't take the wrong decision. China is speeding up with the reform and opening up. We are against unilateralism and trade barrier. We are confident. Just like you said, trade war cannot protect the rights of U.S. citizens, and it will harm U.S. consumers. It will also do harm to global economies and the common growth. We don't hope the escalation of trade friction between China and the U.S. China is ready to echo to the possibilities. If the U.S. side continue this wrong way, we will stay and echo our voice. Economic Daily. I have 3 questions. The first one is, since April 17th, U.S. and the U.K. has forbidden Zhongxin, and the Zhongxin communications has been abandoned by U.S. There is news that U.S. may also ban Ali in terms of cloud computing. What's the comment of your ministry? And the final question is, in the afternoon of the same day, Ministry of Commerce notified the sorghum abandon, the U.S. sorghum abandon. About the Zhongxin company, we've confirmed our stance. Hereby, I want to echo again, China will stay closely on this news, and we are ready at any time to take actions to safeguard the Chinese market's legitimate rights. At the same time, we've notified U.S. action has aroused the worry in U.S. market in terms of trade. It seems that they are targeting at China, but actually they will harm themselves eventually. This will not only lose numerous job opportunities in the U.S. market, but also harm the companies with the U.S. relations. and it will also do harm to global market and to harm the stability of the business market in U.S. We hope the U.S. won't take too many actions because they will bear the fruit. And about the anti-dumping of sorghum, this is an independent case. The final decision is strictly according to WTO's policy and China's relevant laws. Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you. U.S. Ministry of Commerce on 18th sent the anti-dumping and anti-subsidiary of China's steel, and they said the aluminum board is also violating some policy. And there are frequent research and investigations in terms of China-U.S. trade. What's your comment? Thank you. We've noticed since the beginning of the year, U.S. has started 5 investigations on the anti-dumping and anti-subsidiary, and has included more and more goods. There are 3 of them related to steel. According to the statistics of the U.S., in their current trade policies, there are 223 policies targeted at steel-related products, which counts for more than 50% of the total trade policies. We don't want to see the favorable policy of the WTO is wrongly utilized by certain countries and continue their protectionism of trade. For the over-subsidiary of some industries, it might not do good to the industry. We hope the U.S. can come back to the right track of international cooperation and take real actions to promote the prosperity of the global trade. In terms of cooperation, that we can achieve the development of the domestic industry.
Thank you. My colleague will translate into Chinese. I will ask the question in English. The first question is, some of the announced measures against U.S. products in China, such as grains, will also have an impact on Chinese firms and individuals that actually rely on those goods. So how will China actually address those negative effects? The second question is, how do you respond to some criticism that China may have underestimated the Trump administration's resolve to pursue the trade policies against China, given the latest developments with Chinese companies like ZTE?
谢谢发言人，我们是路透社。第一个问题是，目前中国针对这个像美国的高粱采取的一些措施，对于中国国内的这个个人和公司也会产生一些不良的影响。请问中国如何去应对这样的影响？第二个问题是，因为这个美国目前对于像中兴这样的企业采取的措施，那有一种声音认为这个中方目前这个低估了美国总统特朗普要针对中国。采取他的这个贸易措施的这个决心，请问商务部如何回应？谢谢。
Thank you for your question.
谢谢你的提问。
For your first
关于你提到的
question,
第一个问题，我理解
I
你所说
understand
的中国宣
that
布的措施
you mean China's policy announced recently to echo U.S.
你对中国产品
policy and U.S.'s tariff on China, then China said this echoing policy.
这是经过我们
It's after our deliberation and research. It will not affect China too much. Like you mentioned, the grain.
中国自
China itself is a strong country with grain production, and we have growth of grain production between 2014 to 2015, China witnessed 12 consecutive years of grain growth. And between 2016 to 2017, there are 600 million tons of grain. According to the statistics, the grain and corn imported from the U.S. accounted for less than 2% of China's domestic market. It's mainly for the types diversity. So even if there is no such importing, it won't affect Chinese domestic market. And for the impact you mentioned, we've fully prepared. We have the condition and the ways and the capability to dissolve the trade frictions challenge. For your second question, we hope the U.S. don't underestimate China's confirmation and determination. If you continue unilateralism and protectionism, even by taking risks of the benefits of the people and enterprises, this will force China to compromise. Then that's wrong. China will firmly safeguard the benefits of our country and our people. We will never waver in this way. We will fight to the end. Thank you. Phoenix. That was about the trade friction. In March, we witnessed the trade deficit and the negative growth. Does this also prove the uncertainties of trade and why there is trade deficit? Is it related to the trade friction? And because China is enlarging the opening and reform, will this trade deficit continue, and how can we tolerate it? Thank you for your question. Like you said, this March, the export of our trade has witnessed some changes and fluctuation. Declined by 9.8%, and import increased by 5.9%. The trade deficit is 29.7 billion yuan. This is mainly because of the Spring Festival. Many enterprises will enlarge the import before Spring Festival and import in advance. With the workers coming back after the 15th of the lunar January, they will start work. That's the tradition. Before the Spring Festival, they will enlarge the import and export. And after the Spring Festival, they will become normal. In the past 7 years, in February and March, we witnessed the trade deficit. That's all because of the Spring Festival. And this year has witnessed the recovering of a global economy. According to IMF's estimation, 2018 will witness 3.9% of the world economy, which is 0.2% than 2017. That's a record high. The WTO has released the latest report, which estimates in 2018 the global trade volume will be increased by 40%. We can see the demands in the global market is increasing. At the same time, China's economy maintains strong momentum and steady growth. With the deepening of the supply-side structural reform and the inner powers development of China's domestic market, we can see the trend is still very promising. You mentioned a certain country only considers their own benefit and proceed unilateralism and protectionism in trade, which bring uncertainties to global trade, especially to the enterprises. After that, the multilateralism is also ruined. This is also the common challenge faced by economies in the world. President Xi just concluded his address in Boao Forum for Asia. He mentioned we need to face the future together and work together to find win-win solutions. China will continue opening up and reform. China is willing to work with the world's economy and achieve a win-win cooperation and result. This will also do good to China's emerging demands on the life equality. China never pursues a trade surplus or deficit. These are all caused by the market. We will continue promoting the sound, sustainable, and steady growth of foreign trade and to build as a strong trading company. U.S. Ministry of Finance just announced the policy related to Russia, the sanction on Russia. This sanction has already impacted to the Russian enterprises and the citizens. Is China also worrying about this sanction? Will it affect China and the trade cooperation with China and Russia? Thank you for your question. We've noticed that China is always against the unilateralism and uni-sanction in the international trade. We hope U.S. and Russia can respect each other and dissolve these disputes. China's domestic market won't be affected by the external situation in recent years. The trade has increased. The cooperation also increased. The strategic projects also witnessed a positive growth. In 2017, China-Russia trade volume totaled $84 billion for the 8 consecutive years. China and Russia are the largest trade partners to each other. And in the first quarter, the mutual total volume increased by 30%. And in this whole year, it is expected to be over than $100 billion. China will continue to optimize the trade structure between China and Russia and continue to promote the high-end technology cooperation and to develop the cross-online market model to deepen standardization and quarantine cooperation in order to contribute to the convenience of the mutual trade. In this November, China will hold the first China Import Expo. Russia also shows great interest in it. With 2 countries in this July will hold the 5th China-Russia Expo in Russia. We hope to work with Russia to hold these events successfully and to enlarge the trade cooperation volume in order to contribute to the enterprises of both countries. Thank you. My question is about anti-monopoly. The anti-monopoly has released a report in the first quarter. So my question is about your investigation about the Gaotong of the merging case of Gaotong, and will your investigation be stopped after President Trump's order? Gaotong merges the company. Will this impact your investigation? This is a series of questions. Now we are working on the investigation on this Qualcomm's case, because this case will exert deep impact on the market and will do harm to the market competition. The investigation organization need to take time in collecting evidence, and they've notified the Qualcomm company and has negotiated with the Qualcomm company in terms of the negative impact on market. Qualcomm company has offered subsidized plans, and the investigation organizations also conducted tests. It proves that these plans offered by Qualcomm, it's difficult to solve the problem in the market. And the Qualcomm company is again doing research on the plans. Our ministry will continue the anti-monopoly policy and offer the fair and justified opportunity for the market. And you mentioned the institutional reform. Our ministry will firmly follow the Central Committee's strategy and plan, and to help the work of anti-monopoly. On April 16th, after 80 years of stagnation, there is a new round of the economic dialogue between China and Japan. The dialogue between China and Japan is a vital, comprehensive mechanism for both economies. It's been stagnated for 8 years, and this will contribute to the sound interaction between the two economies and add a new driven force to both economies, and also help improve the relation between China and Japan. It will also contribute and accumulate trade achievements for both countries. They've negotiated in the macroeconomic policies and economic communications and cooperations, and the East Asia economic integration and multi-cooperation, and achieved several consensus. The economic achievements between China and Japan will be sustainable, and the dialogue also talked about the future cooperation. China and Japan are the second and the third largest economy in the world. Both countries will continue to offer convenience and liberalization of investment and to promote the economic integration and globalization, and also to promote to local and world economy and to take responsibility of the world's economic growth. Both countries will continue the reciprocal cooperations in terms of high-end manufacturing, shared economy, the medical care and old care, in order to upgrade the China-Japan relation. China also stressed the third-party cooperation of Sino-Japan enterprises. Both countries play different role in the supply chain and has high complementarity to each other. The cooperation between two countries will not only benefit our countries, but also benefit the world. In order to put these consensus into implementation, both leaders welcome the platform for communication and support both countries' enterprises can take full use of the complementarity and speed up cooperation and to implement the projects. Not long ago, President Xi addressed at BFA. He announced the furthering opening up and reform, and he addressed that China will never close its door to open. This will definitely offer opportunity to China-Japan trade. This year marks the 40th anniversary of China's opening up and reform, and also the trade tariff between China and Japan. So China is willing to work with Japan and follow the consensus initiated by both leaders and to continue pragmatic cooperation and inject a new momentum and driving force to both countries' economic growth and to contribute to the Sino-Japan relations. We notified last night there is a report by WTO. U.S. is willing to conduct a negotiation under the WTO framework in terms of 232 policy and 301 investigation. Will China and U.S. start a negotiation? Thank you for your question. We've also noticed such a report. Some are not real. The U.S. side initiated the 232 and 301 investigation and released the tariff lists. This is strongly ruin of WTO's concept. On April 4th and 5th, under the dispute framework of WTO, China has negotiated with WTO in terms of 232 and 301. Negotiation is a must. The U.S. should echo to this within 10 days after China's application. On April the 3rd, the U.S. ambassador to WTO echoed they are willing to continue negotiation with China. This action only meets the procedure demand. China will follow WTO's mechanism and proceed the lawsuit to U.S. U.S. announced the tariff lists according to its 301 policy. This is an abandon of multilateralism. This is typical unilateralism and protectionism of trade. Now, both countries haven't conducted negotiations on the 301 investigation and the tariff lists. On April 15th, Minister talked with Japan. Can you introduce the negotiations achievements and what procedure it is now? Does it relate to U.S.'s plan to go back to TPP? RCEP's negotiation goes in accordance with last November's leaders' requirements and continue the negotiation. On March the 3rd in Singapore, there is ministry-level conference. Multi-parties mentioned the market access policies and re-declared multi-parties will promote the negotiation in order to conclude it smoothly. Now the negotiation is undergoing smooth implementation, especially in investment. There are already witnessed the preliminary progress. All parties showed positive attitude towards this negotiation. The next round of negotiation will be held in Singapore between April to May. In the negotiation, China will continue to respect and support the core role of ASEAN countries. You asked about the relation between RCEP and the TPP. These two mechanisms are different. Some of the members may be overlapped, but they are not related to each other. There are 16 parties for RCEP. They all hope through this agreement they can promote the liberalization and convenience of its domestic trade and also to promote the economic globalization. China will work with all parties to promote the negotiation in order to yield fruitful results. Also, to create a high quality and comprehensive agreement. Time is limited. We have time for the last question. China is speeding up in domestic demand. So what are the concrete measures taken by Ministry of Commerce? Thank you for your question. Increasing domestic demand has a very critical element. That's to increase the consumption, to upgrade the consumption. Consumption upgrading has 6 following measures. The first is to offer the convenience center for urban and rural area, to increase the comprehensive life service in rural areas and to offer convenience. Second, it's the pioneering work for the real economy enterprises upgrading. Third is to establish new platforms for international consumption and to bring in the good quality and featured goods from foreign countries. The fourth is to promote green development and to formulate a green, low-carbon and simplicity lifestyle and consumption style. The fifth is to establish a modern supply chain and to lower the costs while increasing efficiency, and also to improve the informalization and standardization. Sixth is to create a favorable environment and condition and to enhance the trust and to fight the fake products firmly in order to create a safe and sound consuming environment. Ministry of Commerce will hold a special conference on this. Thank you. That's the end of today's press conference. Thank you.